The Gallowgate Shots podcast is sponsored by TyreSpot, the Northeast's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. TyreSpot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to the Gallowgate Shots YouTube channel. My name is Matthew and thank you for being here for another episode of Beyond the Lines. It's a show where we get an opposition supporter's view when it comes to previewing Newcastle's next game. And this Sunday at 4:30, it's the game that some people are calling the Giuseppe Rossi Derby, as Newcastle welcome Manchester United to St James's Park. And to help me preview this one, we are joined by a very special guest. He is a contributor to the No Question About That podcast. He has been nice enough to get up in the morning in Seattle to bring us from the other side of the pond. It is the brilliant, it's the beautiful, it's Ed, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
How are you doing, mate? All right?
Well, my ego has been inflated by that.
Yeah,
so, yeah. I'm not a Yank. I just moved to Seattle.
But it's all right. It's okay. Whether you're a Yank or from anywhere, you're welcome on this podcast, Ed. So
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for spending the time. And like I said, the time difference, it's not it's fully appreciated. So thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm very used to it. I have to do recording with many of my United colleagues back in the UK, and I'm always struggling with 7 or 8 hours. What is it at the moment? Because also the British summertime and American summertime don't align. Well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a look over your shoulder there. I realised it's Alex Ferguson. I thought it might have been Donald Trump for it.
Oh, God.
Let's not get into that. It's not that type of podcast. It's not.
I have to be very careful as well, because if I say the wrong thing, the next thing you know, I'll be recording from El Salvadorian gulag. And I don't know if they allow podcast equipment in there.
Well, we'll try our best not to incriminate you, mate. So we'll only talk strictly football on this thing. But again, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, big Man United fan, big game on Sunday. But before we get into previewing the game on Sunday, I want to talk about Manchester United. Obviously, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of topics we could talk about when it comes to Manchester United. This day and age, I absolutely hate the comment sections of various social media. But some people, and not myself, because I wouldn't really use this phrase, but I'm trying to skate around it. But some people would say, "Oh, banter club, Man United," because obviously Man United, it's been a little, what some would call a fall from grace over the last few seasons. It's been pretty chaotic behind the scenes and on the pitch, to put it politely. But let's not forget a little bit of, referring to history. The last 2 seasons, you've still won 2 trophies. Yeah, you've been in chaos, yet you've still won 2 trophies. And I know that might not be enough for your fan base or for Manchester United being the juggernaut that it is. But we're going to start off with like a 2-part question, because we're spicy like that. It keeps getting talked about Manchester United. There's so much change needs to be done. How long do you feel it's going to take to get things right, or where they need to be for Manchester United? And in terms of the short term, would winning the Europa League make this a good season in the eyes of the fans? Now, I know Amarin has said it wouldn't, but in your eyes. So how long to get it right, and with the Europa League, sort of take up some cracks?
Well, I'll take the second part first. It wouldn't stop the disaster of the season. So, I mean, we are fully in the banter era. It never seems to end. And we just saw the game last night. Classic banter era United blowing a lead through some comedy goalkeeping. We've done that for 12 years now, since my mate Fergie over there decided to retire. So, yeah, it's or to stretch your analogy a bit further, we've jumped off that cliff and hit the bottom of the rocks. And we're just hoping it gets better at some point. Would it save a disaster of the season? No, but it's £100 million tournament now. I mean, the money you'll make from being in the tournament this year and qualifying for the Champions League and the new Swiss format is £100 million. It saves a whole bunch of people's jobs. It allows Ruben Amorim to buy a couple of extra players in the summer. It'll accelerate that transformation. So I think if you look at it from a financial point of view, it's going to take about 3 years to unwind United's bad deals. So in the PSR era, you can't just chuck a bunch of money at it. We're already at the limit of owner funding, and the owners being Sir Jim has already hit the maximum cap there. So everything else has to be organic. So that's why you see all the price rises, which obviously everyone's angry about. That's why you see all the penny pinching or the job cuts. 450 people have lost their jobs at the club now. And why they'll probably look for cheaper, younger deals, younger players, cheaper deals in the summer in the transfer market. And there'll be a lot of activity. And so the financial piece is going to take 3 years to unwind that problem. And we got, what happens with Marcus Rashford, what happens with Sancho, what happens with Anthony. You got hundreds of millions of pounds in theory of talent there that are not playing for the club, and we're paying for them to play for other clubs. And then what happens with all the players that have failed, and there's a whole bunch of players out of contract as well. So it's a long way of saying it's 3 years, I think, but that could be accelerated by qualifying for the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, it's so funny that you mention, PSR and all that stuff, because this day and age is one thing I always say is the game's half played on the pitch and half of it's played on spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And it's quite frustrating, and it's quite, I don't know, ironic, or, I don't know how else to put it, but the fact that I'm talking to a Manchester United fan, one of the biggest clubs in the world, still to this day, I mean, recent success doesn't, really reflect that, but, they are one of the biggest clubs in the world. Newcastle United have been taken over by the Saudis. We've sort of met in the middle a little bit, because we're on the upward trajectory. You've went down a little bit, but we're sort of both still shackled by you haven't made the money to be able to spend the money that could be in the coffers potentially. So yeah, it's quite a funny sort of symmetry there. I was going to move on to something else, but you've mentioned his name there, Mr. Ratcliffe. I'd love to know what your sentiments around that is. I appreciate it's a bit of a not contentious subject, but he's came in to try and put things right. He's obviously trying to fix it, trying to create a foundation from which you can start building again. However, under his tenure, Ten Hag sort of got that contract extension and then had to subsequently be sacked. There's the Dan Ashworth situation, which again is a connection between our two clubs. Yeah. And then there's the redundancies, and then it's like, but we're going to build this new stadium. I'm not trying to make light of that, but how has that felt as a Manchester United fan? The fact that you're seeing these people who've been there for years losing their jobs because of decisions that have been made under the current regime, but you're still trying to fix it. New stadium. What's your sentiments around that?
Everyone's pretty angry, and rightly so, I think. So I compartmentalize Ratcliffe from the Glazers. Glazers have done 20 years of damage to this club. They've sucked hundreds of millions of pounds out for themselves, and about £1 billion in management fees, interest payments, debt repayment, and stuff over that. 1.1 billion over that 20 years. So they're different. They're the cancer. They're the fundamental problem at the club, and getting rid of them is hard because they don't want to leave. Ratcliffe has come in and done some, I would say, what looks like some classic private equity moves. I mean, he used to be like that, and he used to be a private equity hedge fund head, and he has built a company that's a conglomerate by buying up all these, both figuratively and literally toxic assets and clumping them together and running these very low margin businesses. And he's basically come into United and behaved like that. What do you do in a low margin business? You get rid of all the unnecessary costs. Now, football doesn't work like that. And as a result, people are really angry. They're angry because prices are going up next year. It's a kind of 5% headline, but actually you look under the sheets and there's some really ugly stuff under there as well, especially with vulnerable groups like disabled supporters or pensioners and stuff like that have been hit hardest. Angry because people lost their jobs. Ordinary working Mancunians who are not earning big wages, outside of the talent, people in football do not earn big wages, and they were just mercilessly fired. The kind of comedy stuff, really, penny pinching on like stopping food at lunchtime and you only get a piece of fruit. It's like, this is Ratcliffe as the poorhouse operator, and we're all going up there going, please, sir, can we, have some more gruel? And so all of that has led to people being very angry on social media, which, we were talking earlier, it's like you never want to look at the bottom half of the internet anyway, but social media is fully the bottom half of the internet, and it's the worst of the worst. But people there are, they call him Ratcliffe, capital R, capital A, capital T. and they've all kind of been smashed together. And so I kind of understand what he's doing and why he's doing it. And there is at least a vision to get to something that's better than this. But these things don't all tie together well in a nice story, right? You can't do cuts and then promise a glorious future, because I mean, in the last 15 years in the UK, we've been like under austerity of one kind or another. We know where that leads, right? And it's not pretty. And then at the same time going, yeah, sure, we're going to build this new £2 billion stadium, and the financing might be different, and they'll go to a different range of banks and private equity, and maybe Ratcliffe will put some of his own money in, and maybe in 5, 7, 8, 9 years' time, we'll have this shiny new stadium. But right now, there's people who are out of work.
Yeah.
There's a load of crap on the pitch. We keep being told that, well, we have to put prices up because we'll run out of money otherwise. Jim literally said that. And so all these things don't smash together very well. And as a result, you get a lot of anger. And so Jim has to play a very long game. And then last point, I'll let you talk.
No, of course.
He said in his last round of media interviews that, if it got too negative, he'd just walk away. We can't do all the hard stuff and say, hey, I have to do this hard stuff, and then go, I'm too thin-skinned. I'm one of these billionaires who gets off his yacht in Monaco and he can't take it anymore. He's going to have to suck it up. That's what comes with being the owner of Manchester United. Maybe he didn't realise this. Maybe he's been like in his penthouse in Monaco and on his yachts and with a lot of yes men around him, because Ineos does 60 billion euros of revenue per year, right? And like maybe he's just not used to this. Like suddenly he's the focus, and it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on there. It's refreshing to hear your point of view from it, because outside looking in, it is quite. I think sickening's the word, because I mean, but I guess this is a larger point around football as a whole and the direction that it's going. For the people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe to come in and, like you've just said, if things get too negative, I might have to step away. Well, who are you to say that? You know what I mean? It's like you own one of the biggest football clubs in the world, and you're saying that making the common man or woman to like redundant is going to expedite growth in this huge billionaire business. And it just, like you've just said, things just don't add up a little bit for me there. And I'm glad that you sort of said that as well. Don't get me wrong, it's a very tough job, tough situation for him to come into. But yeah, I just, I do really feel for those people who've lost their jobs. It's just, and in the way that the country is right now, it's just, yeah, why do they have to pay for the misgivings of billionaires, But again,
well, I'm throughout society, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a massive can of worms in my hand here, and again, I risk opening it up to different subjects on a football podcast. But I'll park that there. But best of luck to all those people who lost their jobs, because it's just not nice at all. We'll move on back onto football. You mentioned him at the top of the podcast, Ruben Amorim. I'd like to talk about him. Outside looking in, he seems like a manager to me who's talented, knows what he's doing, very much sticking to his guns, putting it out there in no sort of correlation, but in black and white, just saying, this is a shit show. This thing ain't going to get better anytime soon. He got asked if you could win the Europa League this season, would it, be seen as a success? Would it? He said no, nothing's going to make things right this season. I understand why he's saying that, and is that how he's endeared himself to you and to the fans? The fact that he's calling it out, telling it how it is. This is going to be a long haul, getting it right. I know what I'm doing, but I've still came here. But you have to give me time as well. I think it's very smart as well to say that, and I think probably they couldn't afford to sack him if they wanted to, but. Like to say that, I think sort of he's playing that smart game of being like, day dot, I know this is shit. So if there's a bad result on the pitch, I did tell you it was going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean he did say right from the beginning that this was going to be a very challenging time. He said there was a storm coming. We've definitely seen that. I think for the more kind of rational folks watching the games, we can see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. That's not to say think we're suddenly going to become good. It's just you can see the bits on the pitch where his stamp has been clearly put on the team, and he's,
I would agree,
in all the phases, right? So we have become better at building up from the back. He hasn't quite got the players that he wants to do that, like especially in the wing back areas. And then up front, you can see where they're trying to create patterns, but it's pretty uncoordinated. You've got some young players in there. You've got some young players who've suffered from having to play way too much football in Rasmus Højlund and Alejandro Garnacho. They'd be much better if they were coming in to a team where there was some experienced players who are doing all right in there, but they've been thrust into it and asked to perform, and they haven't. They failed, like especially Rasmus has there. And so Amorim's got these problems. He's got a squad that doesn't quite fit him. He had all these attacking players, but he wants to play in a different way. So 3 of them have been shipped out on loan, partly because they don't fit the system he wants, partly because there's other issues with all 3 of them. That's Anthony, Sancho, and Rashford, all of whom will be sold this summer if they can find the appropriate clubs for them. And then you've got the rest of the players who basically, apart from Bruno, aren't in form, or Ahmad was in form before that, and then he got injured. And so I think there's some sympathy and patience with Amorim. It just can't last forever, right? He gets this season as a free hit. If we go into next season and we're still losing half the games, patience will run out quite quickly, and he hasn't got the bank of credit. Ten Hag, there wasn't much patience with him, but he did win 2 trophies, as you said. Yeah. So, and then come back to your original point, was like how he interviews. He's done way too much media. Like, I'd pull back from that. He does like 3 a day at the moment, and he is honest. I think the thing that makes him not Ralph Rangnick, because Ralph Rangnick famously said this club needs open heart surgery, and then they did the open heart surgery. They bought 21 players for Ten Hag. It's just they replaced the heart with a potato, and then we're like, oh, that wasn't very good. And this has been classic. This has been Banter era United, in that we spent a lot of money and it's almost universally bad signings. And that's what we're looking for now. And Amorim needs, for that storm to not just continue, he needs for the transformation that happens in the club this summer to be the right kind of profile of players that fit what he wants, and high enough quality, of course, but the right kind of profile. And then I think we'll see a leap forward in terms of like what we see on the pitch. We'll be inconsistent if it's a bunch of younger players, which it's likely going to be, but it won't be dreadful. And at least we'll see path towards his end state. Now, if we don't see it, like Ten Hag, right, we couldn't see what the end state would be, like, because he threw away all his principles as soon as the team started losing, like played a completely different system, and then tried to smash the 2 systems together, and it was just a mess. And he was always dead man walking. Amorim, at least, he's going, hey, I want to play this way. I want players that will fit this profile, or principles, as he calls it. I want the principles of play to be in the different phases of play, and I want to be able to see that. And I think because he's clear at communicating, we can all go, yeah, all right, we see where he's trying to get to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've put it better than I ever could. Obviously, I'm not a Manchester United fan, but I think, outside looking in again, like you're spot on. I think that patience for next season, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I'm very intrigued to see what you guys do in the summer, what deals are made, and how you go about it. I've got 2 questions in. I'm struggling to know which one I go with first, but I'm going to talk about Marcus Rashford. You mentioned Anthony, you mentioned Sancho. Again, Sancho, Chelsea, Anthony's at Betis. Sancho very much not having the best time of it. Anthony's actually having a sort of bit of a regalvanizing. But Rashford, again, he's done really well in all intents and purposes at Villa, playing in the Champions League for them. I know it's a bit of a loaded question, but what are your thoughts around Marcus Rashford? I mean, as a football fan and as an England fan, I've seen him play very well. I've seen him do in performances where I was like, if I was a Manchester United fan, I'd be very frustrated at his lack of effort. I can see where things, that sort of opinion comes from. You see him go to Villa. I'm not saying he's pulling up trees, but he is playing much better. Whether that's the change in club, Aston Villa obviously going up one way. They're in the Champions League, and Manchester United at this moment in time, Manchester United, no disrespect. Do you see that a world where Rashford comes back to Man United at all, or is it just you need to find someone to offload him to? And what's your opinion on him as a football player? We'll leave the personal out of it as a football player.
Yeah, well, look, I think everyone has a lot of sympathy with young players coming through the academy and making United. Like, everyone likes that. I'm sure that's a universal with football fans. There's extra time given to those players, and me personally, I loved what he achieved at United. When he was a youth teamer, you couldn't have said he'd definitely make it. But he got that opportunity when there were injuries under Van Gaal, and he really did take it. And he moved his career on. And there were times when he was like world class times. His problem at United has been the inconsistency. He plays well in bursts and it goes. And then I'd say, particularly over the last 18 months, where there's something going on in his personal life or his challenges with Ten Hag and the role he was being asked to play there, very wide, very deep, covering for a left back that didn't exist. He looks like a player who's become deeply frustrated with his life. And as a result, the whole package of things that he needs to put together on the pitch, like, kind of crumbled, right? So if he was scoring goals, everyone would forgive the lack of tracking back and defensive work, because he's scoring goals, right? Top player. No one cares that Kylian Mbappe doesn't cover the zone for his left back, right? It's like, no one cares. So if Marcus was still putting up the numbers when he scored 30 goals in that season a couple of years ago, that would be fine. He stopped scoring. He stopped creating chances. He started running down blind alleys. His confidence went. He couldn't beat a man anymore. And he didn't put the effort in. And so United fans generally deeply, deeply frustrated with him. Where I don't go to is the thing that some, what we'd call top reds, like internet personalities, would go to, where if you're not a United player, current United player, not doing well, you have to hate on them. Yeah. And so I don't understand that at all. It's not where I'm at with him. I have a lot of sympathy for Marcus.
Not half the internet, like you said.
Yeah. But it's like people I kind of respect as well have taken that they just want to prove that he's the worst player that has ever existed, and they'll use any data or point or clip or something to prove it. And I'm not there with him. I'm sure something has gone on that has caused this. I don't believe, personally, with all the sacrifices that you have to make to become an elite footballer, right? So 1 in 100 players in an academy will make it into their first team as a regular. Only 21% of academy players at Premier League clubs ever make it as a professional by the time they're 21, right? So the chances that you make it to become an elite player like Rashford are almost zero, and you have to give up everything. You have to give up your social life. You have to give up your childhood. You can't drink. You have to keep fitness. You can't go out with your mates, right? So he gave all of that up, and then we're saying he's just going to forget it. So I don't really believe that he suddenly turned a switch and said, I can't be bothered anymore. I do think something has gone on with him. And there were some incidents. He was late for training a couple of times. That was pointed out. He lied to the club about his drinking in Belfast and was caught. It wasn't just one night as well. He lied twice. So he was caught. He was like, sorry, I went out on that night. And it turned out he'd been on a 2-night bender. He lied to the club again. It's never a good look. Like, where my sympathy comes from is that I suspect something is going on in his personal life that we don't know about fully. I've heard rumors, but I'm not going to repeat them because I can't back them up.
That's fair.
And I suspect there's stuff there that has impacted him. Now, he's gone to a new environment. I think I've seen some of the Villa matches. I mean, he wasn't very good against Paris Saint-Germain the other night, but neither was most of the Villa team. They couldn't get the ball. They couldn't get it to him. He did cut quite a frustrated figure. Like he barely got any touches at all. But there's sometimes when he's created a few goals. He scored a couple of nice ones the other night for Villa. Nice finish when running through. He's beat a man on the outside. That's what you want to see with him. Driving to the inside. And then the defender doesn't know what's going to happen, so he drives to the outside, right? That's when he became a really good player, where he could go both ways. And we've seen some of that. Now, Villa probably have to make it back into Europe next season to activate that option they have on him. Mm-hmm. I think from a financial point of view, they were very, very tight. I mean, as we've seen from their accounts, they would have breached PSR not if it wasn't for selling Douglas Luiz to Juve last summer. So to activate Rashford, they probably have to be in Europe or sell a big player again, and they did one with John Duran. So it's not certain that he will go to Villa. He won't come back to United. I think the bridges have been burned too much, like both with fans generally, but I think Amorim has just decided. It's not that he's been rude about Marcus. He's just said he doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you'd square that circle. So if he doesn't go to Villa, we'll be looking for another option. There's a very narrow range of clubs that could afford Marcus's wages. You know, they have to be in a big league, and they have to be one of the top clubs in one of the big leagues and in the Champions League to make it happen.
I mean, one of the things I found fascinating about the Rashford situation, and again, I don't want to dehumanize the guy too much. Like you've said, he could his problems in his personal life and all that stuff. But it was the fact that I think Ten Hag and Ruben Amorim completely different figures, both as people, as how they're doing their interviews, their philosophies on football. Yet both arrived at the same conclusion on Marcus Rashford. So I found that quite interesting. But again, he goes to Villa and starts doing this stuff, and it's an interesting situation from the outside looking in. But we're talking about future ex Manchester United players. Let's talk about Manchester United players that actually play for you, for a change. Now, I'm not going to go in too much. We're gonna talk about previewing the game on Sunday. Last time out, obviously Newcastle came to Old Trafford and pretty much ran amok. We won 2-0, but it could have been more, especially in that first half.
Yeah,
and we were lucky to play Bruno-less Manchester United. I think it goes without saying that even when things were bad, Bruno Fernandes is the man for Manchester United. Now, I agree with what you said earlier on, that I think recently when I've been watching Man U, that there is shades or green shoots of Amorim imparting his philosophy on Manchester United. I think the Notts Forest game when you got beat 1-0, I thought actually they were a miles better team. They just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And that a very attritional, boring Man City game, however, still played well to get that point. And I still feel like they're slowly showing progress. How important is Bruno Fernandes to Man United? Because without anything crazy happening, it's Friday right now. Hopefully not. I say hopefully. I mean, I would hope that something happens to Bruno Fernandes. But from your perspective, hopefully nothing happens to Bruno Fernandes. He's going to play on Sunday, and we're going to see a different Man United to the one that played us at Old Trafford. Would you call Man United a one-man team right now?
Well, he's the one man that's in form. I mean, with Ahmad out and injured, he's back soon, but not for Sunday. He's the one man that performs every week, and he's, especially since the turn of the year, he's been absolutely brilliant. His numbers are crazy. He always puts up really big numbers in terms of chance creation. So he'll create more than 200 chances a season. He just regularly does that. And his inability to put the ball away is not his fault. He's doing as much as he can. He will end the season with double figures, goals and assists, high double figures again. And he just constantly does it. And he's played at 10, he's played at 8, he's moved around, he goes left, he goes right. He doesn't complain about it, and he performs in any position. I actually thought in the game at Old Trafford, our biggest problem was Casemiro and Eriksen in central midfield, just no leg. Against probably the most physical midfield.
Licking the lips when they saw that team sheet. I thought, oh God, what's he playing at here? And I think Manu came on in the first half, didn't he? Because of what was going on.
Yeah, I don't know whether Manu is fit enough. He's just back. He had a few minutes against Lyon last night. We'd like him to be fit, but he probably isn't ready to play the full 90. He's not physical in that. Mainly this is in that he moves around the pitch a lot. He's not super quick, but he's just very good with the ball and very press resistant. And I think in that game against Newcastle at Old Trafford, you had Bruno, your Bruno, and
what do you mean, the Bruno?
The Bruno. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's Sacha Baron Cohen's character, isn't it? and Tonali, and I forget who the third man in midfield is, which is
Joe Linton.
Yeah, super physical.
Yeah,
and we lacked it. United will still only have two, Manchester United will still only have 2 in midfield. I suspect if they recover quick enough, it'll be Casemiro and Ugarte, or Uarte as he's supposed to be pronounced. That's a better midfield because it protects Casemiro. He's still a very good player, Casemiro, and he's actually in a good moment at the moment. He's just not physical enough to be able to get around the pitch. And so he has to stay in this quite narrow area, and Uarte helps him do that. He provides the legs. And then Bruno Fernandes will be able to drop in a bit deep and support that midfield. I suspect that will be the midfield. It's a much better balance. And it won't necessarily give us a lot of control because you got Bruno and Casemiro both quite risky with their passing. They're both at sort of 75%-ish completion on average. And so there'll be what looks like wasteful passing sometimes. It would help if they had someone up front who actually moves, other than Rasmus Højlund, who He's doing his own impression of a statue that he wants at Old Trafford. It's just on the pitch, you know? And so I think we'll have a better balance, is what I'm saying, for this game. If they all play, and I think that's the other question, really, like with only one actual training day, because they'll have a light cool down today and a bit of training on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And next week's game against Lyon is more important. There could well be a bunch of rotation. Amarim's been reluctant to do that, but he might look at it and go 5 or 6 and like to keep everyone fresh, because it really doesn't matter if we lose. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter in terms of the season.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I would normally take what you've just said, that line, and it'd go perfectly into previewing the game, because I really want to talk about how, you know, will the Europa League be a factor? Will they have an eye on Thursday? But there's one question on my notes that I just don't want to skirt over, and that is over the one man who tries to keep the ball out the back of the net, and that's Andre Onana. As a Newcastle fan, we've had sort of debates over goalkeepers this season, and maybe little bit different. Nick Pope, who I think is a top keeper. I love Nick Pope. It's always been the fact that he can't use his feet very much.
Yeah,
he's not very good at distributing the ball. He's a bit dodgy under pressure when trying to play the ball from the back. People have said Martin Dubravka, ex-Man United, funnily enough, he's a bit better with his feet. Andre Onana was brought in because of his potency, is the way he can play the ball with his feet and stuff. But then you've got to keep it out the back of the net as well. We've seen some of the mistakes he's made. They've been well publicised. As a Man United fan, like, what's your opinion on him?
Yeah.
Is he that bad? Because I've seen him make good saves as well. But he is a bit of a calamity Jane at times.
Yeah, he's got a couple of different problems. One is the United can't build up out of the back as well as we'd like to, and so he ends up going long quite a bit. The pattern of clip it out to one of the wing backs and it comes back and he goes long is very frequent. So we just haven't seen any of the good stuff with his feet in the way. I mean, if you remember the Champions League final, City Inter, and like how comfortable he looks on the ball, and it's been his entire career. He started at Ajax and Barcelona, and he's just been brought up as a footballer. So we just don't see much of it.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to bring in keeper for that and then just not really use it, well, that's some poor planning on the club's behalf as well as the keeper. And then, he's made more mistakes across all competitions than any other keeper in the Premier League that have led to a goal, that is. And he makes other mistakes as well. And it's just deeply frustrating. First half of the season, to get really nerdy, his post-shot expected goals saves ratio was higher than any other keeper across all the top 7 Euro.
So is that a save that he makes after the initial save?
Yeah. So it's the same. So XG, it's how the quality of the chance, like in any particular place on the pitch. Post shot is after the shot is taken, right? So great example of this is Declan Rice the other night to take one of his free kicks. It's a 1 in 100 statistically that they go in. After his shot, the second one was 97% chance. Or not.
Ed, I've got to say, I love these stats. Like, I love this numbers-driven business.
It's totally nerdy, but it just shows really hard chance, great shot, right?
Yeah.
Onana was saving those, right? He's saving more shots than the average keeper would, and he had a +5 post-shot expected goals saves ratio. So he'd saved 5 goals that he shouldn't have done in the first half of the season. It's completely flipped. And something has gone and like so statistically his statistics have gone down, but then you just can't, as a goalkeeper, make all those mistakes, right? It's like you're given a bit more leeway as a striker, but if you have a striker who gets into the right positions and then misses the goal all the time, everyone's going to feel frustrated, right? He's a keeper that does a lot of good stuff and then makes a mistake that leads to a goal. Everyone's going to feel frustrated. And then there's 2 particular things he does. One is he guesses. So he steps the wrong way because he's anticipating. And so you'll see a lot of goals he's conceded. You're like, that wasn't right in the corner. And he's taken a step to the right and it's gone to his left. That's happened quite a few times. That won't be recorded in any data anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's deeply frustrating as well. And then he'll pull off some good stops because he's very athletic as well. It does have good reflexes, but I think on balance, after nearly 2 years with him, I think people have lost patience. And he made 2 mistakes against Lyon, right? So everyone's like, we didn't want to have to spend the money to fix the goalkeeper problem, but we might have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's really good goal. There's not for me. There isn't anyone who's properly all round anymore. It's either you've got a goalkeeper who was really good with his feet and half decent to keep the ball at the back of the net, and you've got some who are really good at keeping the ball at the back of the net, but they're susceptible to pressure and maybe shanking it out or whatever. But no, I was really interested to see what your opinion of Onana was, and you've given that. So I've got 2 questions left, and a lot of them revolve around this Sunday, funnily enough.
All right.
So let's get into it. First one's a loaded question. You are on a Newcastle United podcast, so I really appreciate this, but please speak your truth. What is your thoughts on Newcastle United so far this season? And maybe over the last 18 to 24 months, like from an outside looking in, what are they seen as a team, as a force, as a problem, whatever?
Yeah. Well, all right. So you asked a loaded question. So as a team, I think Eddie Howe's always going to create competitive teams, and his journey is kind of interesting, really, because he obviously started very young in management. He built this Bournemouth side that was very good at attacking, couldn't defend, and it's almost like he's gone the full journey. He now has built a very solid defensive side. With a brilliant attacker in Isaac. I'm going to be nice about him because maybe you can send him to us for no money or something like
never.
that. Yeah. A brilliant attacker, and honestly, like someone of that quality would be completely transformational for Manchester United as well. So I don't really like Eddie Howe. There's something about him that's a bit grating.
Whoa!
He's got this shit-eating grin on him all the time, and so he's kind of annoying.
Ed, Jesus!
Sorry, I'm being polite.
That's my best friend you're talking about there. Sure. Okay.
So,
I didn't ask you a loaded question though, so please continue.
So there's that. Look, you can say, look, and we've played Newcastle a bunch of times, right, in some big games, and it's gone the wrong way for us a couple of times there. So he's built a good side. Obviously, you're challenging for that 4th, 5th spot in the Premier League. It's going to be really tight with City and Aston Villa and Chelsea for that competition. Result here or there will make a big difference for that one, because it's like 2 or 3 points between all those teams. So respect for the team. It's a high quality team, very competitive, very physical, some really good players, Bruno Guimaraes and Isaac in particular. As a club, I have a kind of mixed opinion. I was asked about this on no, it's all right, like polite enough. So as a club, I think you can have a respect for the fan culture. For 100 years of Newcastle's history, like tens of thousands of people have turned up at Newcastle through some really dark times, through the Mike Ashley years, and before that, some really lean times, not a lot of trophies over those years. And you still get tens of thousands of people shirtless, showing their moves on the Gallowgate and all of that. And there's a lot of respect for the fan culture, right? It's a one club city. Newcastle is deeply embedded into the city's culture. It means more, to steal a phrase. So I have a lot of respect for that. I personally think 2 things are a cancer on the game: state ownership and multi-club ownership. So I understand why Newcastle fans are desperate for success after all these years, and deserve it, honestly. Like they turn up all the time through all these dark years, deserve some success. And I don't, wish ill of Newcastle fans at all. And I was glad when they beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final, for example. But I don't think state ownership is right. It distorts leagues. And, I'm sure there's a bunch of Newcastle fans that are going, well, PSR is, part of the red cartel to keep us down and all of this. And it is restricting Newcastle, and they tighten the rules around it specifically to restrict Newcastle's growth. And these arguments about associated party transactions impact City, impact Newcastle, but United voted with City on that one when it came to the Premier League owners meeting. They did that presumably because Sir Jim's looking at the future and going, well, when I get control of this club, I've got
Ineos,
23 billion pounds worth of personal wealth and 60 billion pounds worth of revenue at Ineos, that we'd quite like to call it the new Old Trafford Bowl at Ineos Park or whatever, and dump £100 million worth of sponsorship into that. So I'm sure he's looking at that, but I don't think it's good for football overall. And that is like, and again, I'll repeat, I don't wish ill of Newcastle United fans at all. I just don't think this is good for the game. I mean, I don't think it'd be good for Sir Jim to go, oh yeah, I'm buying the women's team for £500 million. And that's going to solve all our financial problems. Because he could. because like
that's
Chelsea
the
have
thing,
done
though,
it.
isn't it? That's the thing. I mean, I think I think some of apart from your point on Eddie Howe, which is completely wrong, but in terms of like like the way I think it's just the state of football in general. I think that we were getting taken over by the Saudis. I celebrated it just like all the Newcastle fans celebrated it because it was the end of an era of just accepting mediocrity and just trying to turn money over. These guys were going to come in and try and make us into a club, and they have, and I've appreciated it. But at the same time, I've always said there's questions out there around the ownership that can't be ignored. But as football fans, we can't answer them. The geopolitical issues that it's crazy.
Yeah,
but I've always said that football is slowly but surely. I mean, look at the money around them, and again, kind of worm stuff, and we'll draw a line under it shortly. But the things around, like the World Club Championships coming up this summer, the money that's in that,
really distorting. Yeah,
just constantly trying to more money, and you're right. It's just the state of football now. And I actually made a wish, not on a star or anything like that, but I always said, as much as it's ironic or it's a hypocrisy that Newcastle are owned by the Saudi government, I just want to see us lift a tin pot before it really falls off a cliff. And I'm talking about Super League starting to come back into vision and all that stuff. And thankfully we have. And I don't know what the future of football holds, but it's not just the Saudis owning Newcastle; it's the other ownerships, and like you've just said about the rules coming in, that I still personally see them frustrating because it was very annoying. Because as much as I see why they're doing it, it's like, well, City have been doing it for years. Why all of a sudden did it take another sort of government takeover for you to change the rules? You've let them do that with it was frustrating, but again, the concerns I'll always understand them, because at the end of the day, these are the things that are pricing fans like me, fans like you, fans out of it's just why people are losing jobs, and it's so getting away from what it used to be. And
it's not Newcastle United fans' fault.
Yes, you're right.
Mohammed bin Salman chops up journalists. It's not his fault that. It's not Newcastle United fans' fault that the Saudi government disappears political dissidents and stuff like that, right? I can't blame football fans for geopolitical issues. Or the reason why the UAE government, who are, by the way, sponsoring the Sudanese civil war right now, or the Saudis who bombed Yemen for 10 years. It's not fans' fault that the government and the Premier League and the authorities allowed this. Unfortunately, it has been allowed. So that's that one. You talked about the Club World Cup. There's the distorting effect of concentration of money. That is a really extreme example. It could dump £150 million into City's bank account for doing nothing for some pre-season friendlies. And it's not football fans' fault that multi-club ownership has been allowed by UEFA and other. We're in a multi-club ownership group now. We haven't done anything with it. With OGC Nice and Lausanne, and there's a club in Abidjan as well that's part of that group, right? So I don't think any of this is good for football overall. And at the same time, there's that natural conflict with we all want success. During the takeover process, we had three options, right? The Glazers, like no one could say we'd like the Glazers to stay. They're the most incompetent owners possible, and at the same time, they've sucked out loads of money. The Qataris. And we'd be in a state ownership, quasi-state ownership, state-aligned. I mean, he's a prince in the Qatari royal family, right? There's no difference between public and private in that circumstance. Also, Jim, who owns one of the most polluting companies on the planet, and by the way, has a $5 billion petrochemicals plant with the Saudis. He's also in bed with them, So, like, none of these were good. It was a shit option, a shitter option, and a slightly less shit option in Sir Jim. It's like none of this we wanted, honestly, or I wanted. And at the time, I got to know some Newcastle United fans. The three of them that are being quite vocal and active in pointing out, the problems of the ownership, and because we were like, well, do we have to? Activate some activism here against the Qataris, because they were literally paying United fans and ex-players to say nice things. Like, I know this for a fact. I've seen the receipts, right? And like, I was like, this is not genuine fan opinion. This is paid for. Like, the Qataris will be wonderful. So I got to know Newcastle fans. I was like, well, what do we do about this? Should we be raising our voices against this, because you could kind of see the film and worried how it would end with state ownership of Manchester United. And by the way, I don't think a bunch of other fans would like a state to come into one of the world's biggest clubs, clear out all the debts, and go, here's unlimited spending. Like, that wouldn't be good for the game either, for United to completely distort everything. Take it to the Super League conclusion, that would have concentrated wealth in tiny amount of hands. And that also, the thing that's not talked about with the Super League, is it allowed individual selling of TV rights. Like, not for all the games, but for some of the games. It was to test the waters, right? Mm-hmm. So you take 1 billion fans, and you can plus or minus that for Manchester United. It's a marketing number. And then try and activate that commercially. And that could, in the same way that Super League or the Club World Cup that would have completely distorted the finances of football, right? Activate that many people. And it's good for the game and for football overall that we share money.
Yeah, no, if I very succinctly put, I find it so funny. I mean, again, I think I've referenced Can of Worms 4 or 5 times in this podcast, because it just there's just so many issues, so many threads that we can be pulled at. But again, I think as well as you've put that, we must concentrate on a game.
On the football. There is a game.
Well, because I've kept you much longer than I said I would, so I really appreciate you giving me your time, Ed. We'll talk about the game now on Sunday, and we'll quickly make our predictions. I said about Europa League being a factor. I've asked if he's going to have an eye on Thursday, next Thursday. Coming to St James's Park, we've had some good results. Newcastle against Man United in recent times there. How do you see the game going? How do you see the game playing out? You've already mentioned the battle in midfield and how Bruno and Ugarte might give that sort of protection to Casemiro. I still feel that's where the game's going to be won and lost, personally. But what are your thoughts? What are your worries?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, well, the pattern of how United are playing at the moment is we are more secure defensively. I mean, it's 3 at the back, but it's basically 2 fullbacks in those wide areas and 2 sitting in Casemiro and Ugarte. So we're not giving away a lot of stupid goals, save for the ones that Andre Onana's chucking in on his own. So we've kept it tight, right? So you've seen games twice against City, against Liverpool, and against Arsenal, where it's been pretty tight and United are competitive. Right? And it actually helps in some of these games where we're not expected to control possession and not expected to dominate the game, where we can play a little bit in transitional moments. The challenge is, in those transitional moments, we only really have, at the moment, one quick player in Alejandro Garnacho. Carries the ball really well, doesn't beat players at all. He's not that kind of man, doesn't commit players. And he's also in a particular phase where he's, one, particularly selfish in that he's ignoring everyone else and cutting inside and shooting. It's like one trick pony, but he's not pulling that trick off very well. So his shot conversion ratio is in single figures. It's horrendous. He's 300th in the list of forwards for shot conversion. So we're not scoring goals. Rasmus Højlund's in this awful state of mind where he doesn't move. He's not doing the right things. He concentrates on the physical battle, which for most of the time in the Premier League is just it's not a battle. He's winning, and most of the defenders are perfectly comfortable with that. I'm sure Dan Burn's not going to worry about a physical battle on Sunday. And so it's all on Bruno Fernandes to create and score goals, basically, because we're not even that good at set pieces. So, and then the other question, so I don't know whether that gave you I'm not very confident, is a way of putting that in a shorter way. The other question is how much rotation there'll be. I'm sure there'll be some. Amorim hasn't really, apart from, say, for his first month where he rotated 5 or 6 a game, where he's just trying to find out which players suited him. He's not been doing that more often recently, and I suspect he won't do a massive rotation. We've got quite a few injuries, so that reduces the amount. We might see some players, might see a bit of Mainu. He's just come back. Yeah. Mason Mount's had 3 substitute appearances now. There's a good chance he starts on Sunday. Josh Zirkzee's in a good moment. He's playing well. He's not very quick, which I suspect will do for him in the end in the Premier League. It's hard to be slow in the Premier League. And Bruno Fernandes is in a great moment, and he's never rested. He's just a remarkable amount of minutes he's able to play without getting injured. So we'll see a few of those changes. At the back, there's not too many options. De Ligt is injured. Lenny Yoro's having a great moment. He's really coming. You can see why they spent a lot of money on him. He's a very talented player. You'll see him carrying the ball out of the back. Didn't used to do that. He's now doing it. I think that's confidence. He feels comfortable in his own skin at United now. And then it will be one of Mazraoui. Could be Luke Shaw. He's now back at left centre back. I guess Harry will have to play. He's come off twice in the last 2 games. Harry Maguire, that is. Doesn't look like Matthijs de Ligt will be fit. So it'll probably be Yoro, Maguire and Mazraoui. Could be Shaw. Dorgu will have to play. Dalot always plays, even though he's rubbish, honestly. It's just, I mean, as a wing back, he's just not going to offer anything in the attacking phase of play. And probably Owate and Casemiro. If Casemiro is not quite fit, Bruno Fernandes will play in midfield because he gives you that energy. And then you could see Mount and Xerxes in those number 10 roles. So something like that as the team.
Yeah.
Unless he goes crazy and plays some kids, I don't suspect he will.
Well, what if I had to nail you down to a score prediction, mate?
I don't know. We can't. We don't score goals. We don't let too many.
Well, you've said it now. You've said it.
Yeah.
You've said that.
1-1. 1-1.
Okay. 1-1.
I mean, everyone in Manchester would be happy with 1-1. Honestly, we're just like you want signs. Want a good performance, competitive, even if it's tight, like the City game, and then signs that we're going forward. The only games that matter now are this game against Lyon. Whoever we play in the semis and the final, they matter more than anything in the league. But you can't turn it on and off.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the reason I say that about we don't score. I mean, a recent episode, well, I say recent, a few weeks back, we had a Bournemouth fan on here, a great guy, was saying about how worried he was. He was saying, we're in great form, but I think St. James's Park's going to be a step too far. They came up here and absolutely battered us with a thin squad. So I'm not saying that Newcastle are still Dr. Newcastle, as we used to call them. So if you've got a problem with scoring goals or a problem with keeping clean sheets, or you've got a striker who hasn't scored, Newcastle will let that happen.
You.
Yeah. I don't think we're that team anymore. I'm trying to be super positive. Since the Carabao Cup win, I can be nothing but positive because it's just filled a gaping jigsaw piece within me that I'm just super positive about football all of a sudden because I was able to experience just that one trophy lift. And you said about it meaning more. I'm a massive advocate for that because it really did. I've been saying I'm leaning towards a 2-1 for us. I feel like the last couple of games that we've won against Leicester and Brentford, there's been some positives and there's been a few little worrying negatives as well. The squad's a little bit thin. I've always thought that if we come up against a really good side, I'm not saying Man United's a really good side, but they're a team that when I've been watching them, I think they're playing some quite nice football as much as they've only got 1 point over the last 2 games. I feel like you've just said, you're starting to see the game plan being implemented. You're starting to see, Bruno Fernandes. He's always very, very dangerous. So we'll see what happens. I'm still going to stick to my 2-1 just to try to be super positive, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But mate, I've kept you far too long for what I said I was
pleasure.
going to. But it's been an absolutely lovely chat with you. We think we've put the world to rights and then some. But all the best to you again. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's early over there in Seattle. Thank you very, 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 very much. If for somehow you're a Man United supporter and you've stumbled upon this podcast, please go and check out Ed's podcast.
I will go and tweet this out as well. So
brilliant.
You may get a few United fans in your comments.
Well,
they're mostly polite.
We'll see. Oh yeah, I'm sure Man United and Newcastle fans on Twitter are always very, very polite.
Oh, absolutely.
But thanks again, Ed, and to everyone who's watching, thank you so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a comment, please like the video, share the video, all that YouTube stuff. If you haven't already, please become a subscriber to the channel. It's $2.99 a month. You get access to plenty of exclusive content. There's more and more coming out as the months go by. But until then, if you come to the game on Sunday, safe travels and hope you have a great time. And hopefully we can get the result that puts us in good stead for Champions League qualification next season. So all the best and thank you for watching.